My name is Chris Gaizat. I just turned 36, and I work 8 to 5 as a senior help desk administrator for an aviation company. I love my job. I get to help people, I make a steady income, and every once in a while I have to put up with stuff like this.
Gaizat, the IT guy? What a nerd.
Okay, to say I'm a nerd doesn't quite fit the bill. I'm a collector, and everything I have has a purpose and a story. Superman, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Surge, just to name a few. Heck, even my whiteboard is a collection of video game, TV, and movie quotes. I love showing all this stuff off, but that's not the end of the story. Oh no, my collection doesn't start here, it's just a taste of something much more, extensive at home. This is my castle. And these are my subjects, or I mean family. Recently discovering we have a third child on the way, our guest room, my safe haven, is needed for the new baby, and I'm not sure what to do with all of it. If these walls, these toys, these games could talk, I wonder what story they would tell me. I inherited the house from my grandfather who passed away a few years ago. Where all this stuff sits used to be his collection of vintage car models. My aunt has them now. I can't believe it's been 7 years since he's passed. Owning his house, I think about him every day and wonder what he'd think about his room now. I'd probably trade it all just to hear him tell me. This room seems to come alive when people see it. It's like they begin to relive their childhoods as soon as their eye catches, well, I guess it could be anything. I feel their sentimentality as if it were my own. It runs so deep, so personal. It must be why I keep buying things for my daughters that I used to have as a kid, like this AG bear. Why do I keep doing that, I wonder? Now, video games, that is my passion. Some of my fondest memories were getting some of these games. Super Mario 2, for instance. Well, my goofy expression says it all, doesn't it? Games. They were like babysitters to my brother, sister, and I. My brother and I went as Mario and Luigi for Halloween the year... Gosh, that was 24 years ago. Now I have a new legacy. Take, for instance, this character. This is Farron, my daughter. And oh, the monster I've created.
Okay.
Daddy, do you play a Mario game?
I'm eating!
Dad, I can play the Mario game?
Farron, I'm using the bathroom.
But then I play a Mario game. Hey, Daddy, do you want to play a Mario game?
Okay, let's play the Mario game.
Okay.
This is me. Wait, no, this is not me. This is my twin brother Eric. He's been my brother for as long as I can remember. No, he's not stealing his neighbor's package. He has 2 front doors, only one to which he has a key for. Did I mention he's a collector too? He does love getting new things in the mail, and who can blame him? Every time the mailman comes by, it's like Christmas all over again. I know he's excited to add yet another piece to his ever-growing collection. You and I'd probably feel the same way about it, with one slight exception. If you and I got a new toy for our collections, we'd probably keep it in a package and let it appreciate in value, right? Not him. Yep, he's every serious collector's worst nightmare. Oh, if you couldn't guess it, he's a Batman collector. He has so many things in his collection, you'd swear he actually thinks he is Batman.
I'm Batman. Okay, you really need to stop telling Farron about our childhood so much. She just called me Beast Man.
Oh, it could be worse. She calls her mom Man at Arms.
So, did you come to a decision yet on all this stuff?
No.
every time I go through this stuff, all these memories come flooding back, and I just get confused. I don't know what to do.
I'm sure you'll figure it out. Is that the Nintendo World Championships?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Man, I haven't seen this thing in years. Oh, man. Do you remember when the Nintendo World Championships came to Indianapolis?
Yep, it was 1990. It was the same year Super Mario Bros. 3 and Batman came out. We went to the video store and rented them, remember?
Oh, yeah. We must have played those games like all night.
Mm-hmm. We were so primed that night from going to the convention center. Gosh, remember we got to actually play test the Game Boy and play all those new games that were coming out? It was just a fantastic time, and it's actually kind of what inspired this Nintendo room.
Oh, man, it makes for such a great story.
It's just one more to add to the stack we've collected the past 3 months.
So I guess that makes us the collectors of collectors.
Yeah, that was the point, right?
Yeah, to gather the stories about all these collections and look at the various aspects of why people, collect what they do.
Yeah, and of all the people we talked to, Shane Turgeon was definitely the most knowledgeable in his field.
By far.
Can you tell us your name and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, my name is Shane Turgeon. I do a lot. I own a tattoo, toy, and comic book store in Edmonton, Alberta called Shades of Grey. I am the co-founder and general manager of the Edmonton Comic and Entertainment Expo. I am the founder and director of the Edmonton CollectorCon, and I am the author of a coffee table book on Star Wars tattoos called The Force in the Flesh.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That's a lot to take on. What is it that you collect?
I primarily collect vintage Star Wars figures in 3 3/4-inch G.I. Joe, with an emphasis on prototype and pre-production material from those lines. But I also dabble in a lot of other 70s and 80s toy lines, comic books, and original comic book artwork.
What are some of the cool prototypes that you have?
In the Star Wars world, I have a run, which is basically what a lot of pre-production collectors will try to do, is put together as many examples of something from the development of one particular action figure or toy, and that's called a run. And I have a run on a droid animated character called Val Jobin, where I have pretty much every known example of pre-production material, everything from the original wax sculpt to several hard copies, different first shots, the original packaging painting, several packaging proofs, and every known prototype for the coin that came with the figure. So my collection is not very big, but it's full of mind-blowing things. So in terms of just sheer numbers, I have a complete loose set of vintage figures and a complete set of G.I. Joe figures from 1982 to 1989. And that's really about it. I don't really go overboard in terms of finding, like having thousands and thousands and thousands of figures anymore. I'm more about just having a nice, refined, small collection.
Now, you told us previously when we talked before that you were an appraiser of some sort in Canada. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I am a certified appraiser through the Canadian Personal Property Appraisers Group. I was the first person in Canada to be certified to specialize in pop culture collectibles, be it toys, comic books, original comic book artwork, movie posters, things like that. I did that because, in Canada, you have to have an appraisal report in order to get insurance for your collection. Given the knowledge that I had and the reputation and the experience level that I have, I figured, well, maybe I should be that guy to give that opportunity to people to be able to appraise their collections. But it's a great thing to be able to offer that, because at the end of the day, somebody who specializes in farm equipment isn't going to know the difference between a US 12A Darth Vader 12-back versus a Canadian GDE 12C Darth Vader 12-back, and the sheer value difference between those two pieces.
Wow. Yeah, I have no idea what the value between those pieces are at all.
Man, Shane knew so much about collectibles.
Yeah, I asked him why he thinks I collect for my kids, and this is what he told me.
I think it's that familiarity thing where you can relate to your kid, in that they like this item and you grew up with that item, and then you can have that bond and you can share that. There's a really big reason why, brands like Star Wars, Transformers, Masters of the Universe, My Little Pony, and are resurging again and are at the top of the toy charts, because that generation that grew up with them is now having those kids, and they loved those toys then, so now they get to share that experience of loving that toy with their children now.
Yeah, I guess that is true. I think maybe that is what I'm trying to do, is find that common ground between us. That is a good point.
When Shane was talking about pricing out all of his toys and stuff, it made me wonder, do you know how much your collection's even worth?
Honestly, I don't. Most of it has sentimental value more than anything. Take, for instance, Super Mario 2.
Oh yeah, I remember that. When did you get that again?
It was Christmas Eve, and we were in 5th grade. I remember going to all the different toy stores with Grandma and Grandpa looking for this game, and it was sold out everywhere because it was so popular. But, you know, I remember having a really bad headache that night, and after opening all of our presents and not getting the game, I was really disappointed, so I went back into the other room to lay down and get rid of the headache, and Grandma came into the room, and, you know, she told me I had one more gift under the tree, and guess what it was?
A puppy.
I don't care what this game is worth, that's the story of the reason why I have it.
What would you say is the most you've ever paid for a piece in your collection?
I usually don't like to talk about value, but I will say this, you know, when you start to get more and more serious about collecting, you know, the first time you spend, you know, if you're used to just spending $10 on modern toys, and then the first time you spend $50 or $100 on something, you're like, whoa, man, I just spent $50 on this, I just spent $100 on this item. And then that $100 gets a lot easier, and then it's like, oh man, I just spent $500 on something, I can't believe I did that. And then $500 gets a little easier to swallow. And you know, you kind of feel like you got hit by a bus, but then $1,000 gets easier, and then it's $3,000, and then it's $5,000, and then it's $10,000 you spend on something. And
Wow.
you know, before you know it, the money doesn't really matter at all.
You know, the value that we have for things has a name. It's called perceived value. And no one knows that better than Dwayne Butler.
Oh yeah, he's that auctioneer guy that sold off that superhero museum, right?
Yep. This is a guy who makes a living by playing the perceived value game.
My name is Dwayne Butler. I am a professional auctioneer in the state of Indiana.
What kinds of things do you collect?
I like to collect pictures of things I've bought and sold, but normally I like to buy and sell, collect art, anything related to an artisan who's created something personally with their hands, brought it to life, made it something important. So,
Would you call yourself an active collector or a passive collector?
I would definitely be considered an active collector, always pursuing, always trying to find the next greatest, more cool, wonderful, unique item I've ever seen.
So tell me what it is that you understand about perceived value.
Perceived value is personal. It's what you think is important to you at that moment. I mean, why is it that, you know, we go after childhood memories? Why is it that real estate in one market is greater than it is in another market? How come someone else has to buy a vehicle with 4 wheels for $250,000 and somebody has to buy one for $250? It's what's important, and it's where you see it as important. Why are you willing to give what you want to give at that time to get it? It's personal. It's very, very personal.
Can you tell me what role perceived value plays in your job?
Well, in my job, the opportunity is for the value to always increase. I mean, if I take it to auction, you're willing to possibly give more that day for what it is because you want it. And you can't leave without it. So for me, nothing gets my heart flowing more, gets the adrenaline going, gets me excited than knowing that I've got a room full of people and I have 2 that aren't going to leave without it. And that's when it's my turn to start talking.
So do you ever do you ever play off the perceived value to help drive the value of items up?
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the only one I have today. I offer classes. Hate for you to miss. You know, you can show up tomorrow morning for my wish you coulda shoulda room, you know. Sir, I would hate for you to have to go home with that young lady tonight and explain to her why another $100 you couldn't see sharing that with her today. I mean, that would just be hard. So absolutely, you know. Guys, we've waited all this time. I don't know if you've ever seen another one. We're going to sell it today. You're in or out. Yeah, the opportunity, you got to buy now. Wow. And good auctioneers, you know, don't take no for an answer. When they tell you no, that's when it's your time. You come alive. You're there to sell. And that's what I'm hired to do. So.
Huh. He definitely had the crowd's attention when I saw him up on stage.
Yeah, he's definitely a character. You know, one time I had this professor who actually talked to us about perceived value once. And the way he did it was, the way he taught his classes, every year, the first day of class, he would pull out a brand new, crisp, clean $1 bill, and he would basically auction it off. And he would start the auction off at a penny. And so he'd have the whole class betting, and they'd start with a penny and go up from there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 cents, 15 cents, 20 cents, 20 quarter, 50 cents. And then he said that usually when it started to get up to about 95, 96 cents, it would slow down. And it'd get really quiet. And then, if you said before you knew it, someone's like $1, $1, $15, $2, $3, $4. He said, and on average, he would sell a $1 bill for $18.
$18.
Yeah, and he basically explained it like this: that perceived value can go one of two ways. It can go to where you're trying to get the best deal, like early on when people were betting the lower change and stuff like that for the dollar bill. And then it comes all the way up to, like, I have to have it. Now I have to win this because now it's a trophy.
Okay.
And that's how, people, and that's how he would basically describe perceived value to all of us.
So what was the coolest thing Dwayne ever sold?
I have auctioned off some rare, wonderful collections. A baseball autograph collection of 300,000 signatures, all collected by correspondence. Wow. An artifact that sold for $220,000. Bronzes for $30,000. Bat boats. But I think the coolest that I'm the most proud of, because I helped solicit it and found it, was in Wilbur Shaw's desk. Wilbur Shaw was the vice president and president of the Indiana Motor Speedway, was found in the 1970s. They took his desk apart, and there were two 1909 inaugural Indianapolis Motor Speedway posters.
Wow.
The only one that was ever known to exist up to that point, and still to this day besides those two, is in the Library of Congress.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so it sat there, unfiltered, totally mint, beautiful condition, and we got to sell it. And I had 9 phone bidders. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway had never seen it, seen one besides that one, and it actually sold to a European collector.
He did mention that he had been offered to sell some clown paintings that were done by John Wayne Gacy.
Whoa, the serial killer?
Yeah, the serial killer. And so he kind of expanded upon a little bit about why he wouldn't sell certain things.
Well, for me, there are several things, several criteria for what I will and won't auction off. One is do I assume or that anyone will care about any of that stuff, and why would I waste my time bringing it to the market when the value of it is minimal, in my opinion. So sometimes I use my opinion. The other is I have morals and standards, and sometimes you have to decide whether or not you want to, even though there may be a value out there, you have to decide whether or not it's something that you feel that you can carry on or live with. At that point, we decided, no. We'll make our money some other way.
It's nice to see that people still have standards.
Yeah, I mean, even though he could have made a lot of money, his conscience made him take the high road.
Sounds like a safe bet.
It's cool to see, even in just this little endeavor, like what people have, like what we've uncovered. Every piece to people's collection has a story behind it. These really cool stories of either how they got it or how it was made or how, just the history behind it that just nobody knows.
Yeah, and to be honest, like collecting is nothing without the stories and the adventures and the friendships that come from it. If you don't have any friends that you're sharing it with, then what's the point?
Yeah, I asked some of my work friends over one time, and I had a guy come over and he challenged me to Super Mario Kart, and he hadn't even played in years, and he just stomped me into the ground. Man, I actually thought I was pretty good at that game. Oh well.
You were never good at that game.
You know what games I'm really not that good at?
All of them?
Sports. I have to leave the house.
Yeah, I've dabbled in a few over the years.
I own a bowling ball.
Where are you going with this?
Sports collectors are huge in the collecting scene, so I wanted to get into the mindset of some of the people who collect sports. So I went downtown to talk to Matt Hanlon, the owner of the Collector's Den, and he kind of gave me a better understanding. Can you tell me your name and a little bit about what you do here?
Name is Matt Hanlon. I'm the general manager, Collector's Den.
I had a few questions about sports collecting in general. What would you say is the difference between like a sports collector and someone who, say, collects toys?
The toy collectors, I guess, would be strictly going back to your childhood, whereas the sports memorabilia, it's just going to be good memories throughout your life. Okay. It's something that reminds you of a happier time. And the type of stuff that people like to hang up on their walls is going to be something that inspires somebody else when they come into the basement to say, oh, I remember that. Oh, yeah, I do too. And then it sparks a conversation. The best stuff is the stuff that you actually got yourself, the ticket from that big game or somebody you met. And they'll say, wow, you met Bill Russell? I sure did. Let me tell you the story.
What do you think sells the most out of sports memorabilia?
Baseball.
Really?
Yeah. Throughout the country, yeah, it's always baseball. The industry was pretty much started because of baseball. Baseball cards were the first thing. It's the sport that wraps itself in nostalgia more than any other.
What's the most expensive thing you've ever sold?
Babe Ruth baseballs.
Babe Ruth.
Yeah, I've sold autographed Babe Ruth baseballs. They'll go anywhere from mid-teens to upper 40s, thousands of dollars.
Wow, he had a Babe Ruth signed baseball.
Yeah.
How much did he want for it?
38 grand.
You know, there's one thing about people that collect sports stuff that just doesn't sit well with me.
Are you talking about the guys who used to pick on us in high school?
Yeah, I mean, when we used to collect superhero stuff and card games in high school, we were not cool. We got picked on all the time.
Now it's actually not cool if you don't collect stuff like that.
Looks like we got the last laugh.
Well, think about that mindset and consider this. Indianapolis is home to the largest gaming convention in the world.
Gen Con.
Gen Con.
What's up, Batman? Gen Con 2014.
We're here at the Rather Dashing Games booth here at Gen Con. Can you tell me your name and a little bit of what you do here?
Yeah, my name is Grant Wilson. I do all the art for Rather Dashing Games. We started the company a few years ago with my best friend I've known since I was 5. He's a game designer. I do the art. It's perfect. We have kind of a hive mind, so we can make the games very quickly, and people love them.
So can you tell me a little bit about if you personally collect anything or if you know anybody who does in your family?
My collection is board game, but my son, well, I have 3 kids. 2 of them are collectors. One of them collects everything Sonic, everything Mario. And we went to PAX East, and he was at the Sonic booth, Sega booth, and he was teaching the people there or correcting them on the stuff. And I'm like, yeah, just gonna stop, bud. But they were loving it. They thought it was awesome.
We got a balloon. Would you like a balloon animal? We have quite a selection. I'm okay.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about if you collect something?
I do collect quite a lot of things. My passion is around Batman, as you can see from my lanyard immediately right there. But I have jewelry between watches. I have rings that I collect. I try to find things that are a little more esoteric, things that aren't just like the action figure and things like that. Although I do have action figures, and it's been something that I've done for a very long time, just as a hobby. I started at a very young age. I got really lucky. I had a family friend when I was growing up at a comic book store, and he knew Bob Kane personally. He knew Bob Kane, the Bob Kane, yeah. And he introduced me to him at a very young age.
He met Bob Kane?
Yep.
The Bob Kane.
Can we finish the interview now?
You may proceed.
And it was very much like that Mickey Mantle moment, right, where you meet someone who you're like, wow, you're the guy who made Batman, and I love Batman. It's awesome, right? You know, I remember looking back on that time, and when I find things that I'm collecting and looking for. It more is stuff that reminds me of, that moment and that time and being able to meet him. I only met him once, but it was still an amazing experience.
My name is Monty Michael Moore. I'm a full-time fantasy illustrator in the gaming, comics, and film world for about 20 years now as a freelancer.
Can you tell me what it is that you collect, or a story about your collection?
Well, I create a lot of artwork for other people's collections, but my own personal habit for quite a while was motorcycles.
You said that you create pieces for other people's collections. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, a lot of what I do, because I create original art, I'm not using a computer. So most of the time the collectors know who's doing original real art. Otherwise you're collecting a reproduction. And any of the serious collectors, they're way past any sort of digital or Photoshop created art. They want original sketches or paintings like you might see here in the booth. And so I work with a lot of collectors who are into that original art, whether it be from a comic book or a movie or a video game. And sometimes they'll seek you out, or you might meet them at a convention.
Boom! I got you!
Your general's on fire.
Oh, dang it!
1 month later, I actually went to another convention, Horror Hound.
Ooh, that sounds scary.
Yeah, actually saw one of the scariest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
Okay, so we're at the celebrity table of Halloween Michael Myers, Tyler Maine. Can you tell me a little about what you collect?
Oh man, I collect a lot of stuff. I collect watches. I collect guitars. I have the first guitar I ever owned, which is a Raven guitar, a 1964, I believe, guitar. I've got Les Pauls, I've got Stratocasters, I've got signed guitars by celebrities, I've got all kinds of stuff, and I've started collecting motorcycles. I mean, I'm just collecting horror.
You said you had a passion for the guitars. Like what drives the passion?
The passion is like that first guitar that I got. It's beautiful red. It's like it is a 60, 64. I wanted to be a rock star when I was younger. Didn't work out, went into pro wrestling. I actually had another Les Paul at the time that I had to sell so that I could get into pro wrestling. So I just started collecting them. I wanted to be a rock star, major fail. And I just love them. I love there's nothing like a good guitar, man. It's sexy.
Okay, so we're here at the table of Ari Lehman, the very first Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th. Can you tell me what it is that you collect?
Oh, I love to collect small animal sculptures that I find all over. I don't know why exactly. I find them like sometimes I'm in the Southwest and they do the little turquoise ones. And then, I got a beautiful jade one. It kind of looks like a dragon, but they said it's like a fire lion or something, And
what do you think brings that passion to collect that stuff?
It's interesting. Collecting is definitely a phenomenon, and I do have the pleasure of interacting with a lot of collectors on a pretty much daily basis.
Okay.
And what I think it's that there's a reverence for the time spent with that object. Okay, kind of like with an artist. When you're looking at a Picasso, that means that Pablo Picasso actually spent hours with that canvas.
That's true.
And that, his space and time intersected with that canvas. and then it's in your house. I mean, that's phenomenal.
That is pretty cool.
But then again, when you think about it, okay, if you have someone like the great Ted White, who's here, who was John Wayne's stunt double for 17 years, and did the stunt coordination for most of the great World War II movies, which are such an important part of cinematic history for America, and you have his autograph on a machete, well, it's not just a machete anymore. I mean, there's a machete, and then there's a machete that Ted White, the great Ted White, has signed. I mean, it totally transforms that object, because why? It becomes a talisman. It becomes it's almost a shamanistic quality that this individual has transformed that object into, if you will, a symbol or a talisman of, in our case, Jason Voorhees.
You know, when I was at Gen Con, when I was talking to Monty Michael Moore, he actually used a term that I'd never heard before. It was called completist. And thinking about the definition of that, I started kind of connecting the dots with some of the other people I talked to at these events.
And a lot of times they're very what I call completists. They want their collection to be very complete, or they'll only collect certain artists.
And I have another son that collects. He's more of a video game collector. So when he's in the video game, he gets everything.
Oh, okay.
Like League of Legends, he's got all the guys, you know, and all this stuff, and he collects that, and he's like a stat collector, more than actually the coins or anything like that or figures.
Well, I like to tell everyone, the essence of collection is completion. Because, of course, there's 12 Jason Voorhees, and if you can have a poster or a machete or a photo or DVD autographed by all of those Jasons, well, obviously, it becomes a real super talisman, you know, supercharged. And then, of course, everybody's like, oh, I'm just missing one. And interestingly, that you mentioned it, the past two people who just came to the table had items that were signed by almost all the Jasons, but then they lamented my good buddy, Sir Richard Brooker, who has made the transition, if you will, who's passed away, and they can no longer get his autograph. So, you know, I think that underlines how meaningful it really is.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about time, people.
That's true.
And
That's true.
if you get it in time, then you'll have that in your house. But time passes.
Thinking of the word completist reminds me of one particular really clever marketing gimmick, and that was Pokemon. Now, when you think about the word Pokemon, you think about their catchphrase, which was what?
Gotta catch them all.
Gotta catch them all, right?
All of them.
But really, I mean, you know, if you don't have them all, then your collection's worthless. That's the whole point of these stupid little toys, right? But at the same time, it's such a great hook.
Yeah. Well, Pokemon was at the end of when I was playing video games, so I don't have any of that stuff.
Wait, you don't have any of them?
I don't have any of them. The next aspect of collecting, we may want to do over at your house. Then.
All right, let's head on over.
Cool. Let's go.
Yes. Welcome to my lair. Yeah, glad to be here. So we're here to talk about social media.
Yes, we are. You run a podcast about a game called War Machine, correct?
Yes, it's called Counter Slam, actually. Okay. And basically what it is we play War Machine and Hordes, the two games that go together. Think robots versus monsters. And so we basically talk about the game. We play the game for our viewers, and they get a chance to kind of see what the game is like. And you know, we bring viewers together, and you know, people can discuss about it on our YouTube site or Facebook, and able to use kind of, you know, these models, this sort of hobby, as a way to just kind of bring people together.
Well, I went to the Indianapolis Toy and Comic Expo, and I got a chance to meet a guy who runs his own podcast. It's a retro podcast called The Geeks of Retro.
Oh, cool.
His name is Richard Grayson.
Richard Grayson, like as in Dick Grayson to Robin to Batman?
Why does everything have to be Batman with you? Can you tell me your name and what it is that you do?
My name is Richard, and I'm a collector, I guess.
You're a collector. Yeah.
I mean, we do a live talk show each night for various topics and subjects. We talk everything from video games, toys, Transformers. I'm trying to think. Gosh, I mean, we talk about so much stuff.
I'm definitely into the video game scene, and I see all the game stuff you have, and I'm like, your Nintendo inbox is way better than mine. So, and Super Nintendo as well. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm totally digging this room. This room is really cool. So the things that you collect, do they have individual significance, or just just an overall collector of certain things?
I've been collecting Transformers since I was a little boy.
Okay.
My grandfather was a big antique dealer, and whenever he got into collecting, he knew it was going to become a bug with me. Because he used to take me all to the auctions and all the big shows that he would host and whatnot. One of my first conventions I ever went to was a beer stein convention.
Oh, wow.
And it was amazing, some of the beautiful pieces and I actually still have one of my old German beer steins from Budweiser. It's about that tall. I keep it in a box and it's padded up and bubble wrapped the works because if anything were to happen to it, I wouldn't know what to do. This was actually the very first collectible thing my grandfather had bought for me.
Wow.
So then he showed me the ins and outs of collecting as far as with my Transformers and stuff. You know, if you're going to play with them, growing up as a kid, buy one, play with, keep one in the box.
Okay. That's definitely a good piece of advice. Why Transformers?
I don't know. Honestly, they're cool.
I wouldn't disagree.
Well, I mean, I used to be a big dinosaur nut, and so whenever Jurassic Park came out, I bought every single thing that Jurassic Park ever made.
This setup you have here on this table is pretty fantastic. What exactly do you use it for?
Actually, we do a live talk show Monday through Friday on Mixler.com. Okay. And it's we talk. It gives us the ability to actually outreach and talk to other people about the things we all love.
Okay.
We're on Facebook. We're on I think I'm on probably like 30-40 Transformer groups, large groups. I mean, we started off with 5-10 listeners, and now we're up to anywhere between 30 to, I think the biggest group we've had was about 450 live listeners. And
that was going to be my next question, so that's really cool.
Offline listeners, we're up to, I think, anywhere between 7,000 to 10,000 people that listen to our show every week.
That's amazing. What do you think drives people to your podcast?
I have had a lot of people say that we're like the geeky nerds. We're like the Howard Sterns of geeks. Okay. We don't hold back. We've had paper bowl fights in the middle of a podcast before. I got beat up on my wife with a lightsaber during a podcast. People think that's hilarious and they like that. We're not this, I'm reading from a book and it is, it's boring. We're very upbeat, we're interactive. We have live guests on here all the time. The guests love it, and that's the point. And it's fun. Again, the great thing about Mixler is that it has a live chat room, and our guests are able to get in there live with us and interact with us. So that's the reason why on Thursdays we'll submit out a thing saying, what do you guys want to talk about? We'll get in there, and I'll have a couple topics I'll try to get things warmed up. And then I just start feeding off what everybody else wants to talk about.
Yourself included. Do you think it's the personal experiences that you've had with these things is what helps fuel that bond between all your listeners and
Absolutely.
You? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can definitely feel being able to connect with certain things, especially with Transformers. It's huge. So
I grew up on G.I. Joes. I remember I asked my buddy the other day, I was like, dude, is it bad when I could sit here and daydream and recollect back on the days when I was a kid and when I would sit there in the dirt with my Transformers, my G.I. Joes, and my dinosaurs and just play for hours. And that was my sanctum, And he's like, I don't know. I was like, the problem is I could take my son outside right now. We can go play some Transformers. They ain't gonna break my heart. His Transformers, not mine. Right. But
So he uses the power of nostalgia to bring all of his listeners together, and I think that's really cool.
Nostalgia is a powerful feeling.
I completely agree. Like I said, it's the whole reason why my Nintendo room exists.
Now we're getting into my area of collecting.
Don't say Batman.
No, actually not Batman. Here, you know what? Follow me.
Okay.
Alright, so you want to know why I collect Transformers?
Sure.
So the reason why I collect Transformers now is because when we were kids, we used to have a ton of Transformers.
Yeah, I remember.
And, we used to get them for our birthdays, Christmas, every major holiday. And, they were really fun to play with.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one year where some members of our family were not doing so hot financially. And, our mom came to us and said, hey, what do you think about giving these toys to, them?
I remember I had to get rid of a lot of He-Man figures, too.
Yeah, but we agreed to do it.
Yep.
And, but then it's one of those weird things, right? Because after we gave it up, then it's kind of like, man, I kind of want to play with those things, but they're not there anymore, you know?
Yeah.
And so what's funny is, as I got older and I got into college, a lot of these particular figures that we really liked started getting re-released, started getting reproduced. And so I decided, why not start collecting them? And one of my favorite ones, of course, was Predaking.
Mine too. It was fantastic.
The animals that joined together, they weren't, the animals and robots, they weren't just construction figures or trucks and cars and stuff.
Big.
It was the biggest of the little combiners, that's right. And I remember I got the package in the mail right before I was supposed to go to class in college, and I fought forever trying to figure out if I wanted to go to class or play with my Predaking. I was late to class that day. But that's the reason why I collect Transformers, because I'm able to collect the ones we couldn't get when I was a kid. I was able to collect other ones that they've since made look better, like the Masterpiece, like Megatron, Optimus Prime, all those guys, and they just look amazing. And I can own those now where we couldn't even own those as kids, and it's still very nostalgic for me.
It's funny you should bring up Transformers.
That's not funny.
What if Transformers never existed?
That's not funny either.
I met a guy from Chicago, and he had something in his collection that actually defined our entire childhood. So we're here at Kokomo Toys and Collectibles, and can you give me your name and what it is that you do?
In the G.I. Joe community, I'm known as Gyre Viper. I pretty much exclusively collect G.I. Joe pre-production, prototypes, mock-ups, canceled figures, unreleased figures, artwork. I mean, not in excess. I'm very picky about what I collect. Everything I have that I keep in my collection, no matter what I find, I want it to be able to tell a story. Or what I like is when people look at something in my collection and they have to be reminded they're looking at G.I. Joe. Like, I love the weird stuff. So yeah, I pretty much just stick to prototypes and that sort of thing.
But why G.I. Joe, of all things? It could be anything.
Okay, when I was little, I loved He-Man, Thundercats.
Me too. Oh yeah.
The difference was that when I got a Thundercat figure, I couldn't play with it like a Thundercat. When I got a He-Man figure, I could almost play with it like a He-Man figure. When I got a G.I. Joe figure, not only could I play with it, and the articulation and the detail was there, but the G.I. Joe cartoons, they dictated playability to me. But G.I. Joe, for some reason, just translated that so much better to me as a kid. And I remember thinking that to myself, because I remember I'd sit there looking at my G.I. Joes and go, I'd rather play with these.
Yeah.
Like, I would just rather... It was the articulation, the scale, everything was just what I wanted out of a toy. Thundercats were big and stupid.
They were really big.
I loved them.
Yeah.
I loved Mask. I loved Mask, but you know what? In order to play with Mask, you can't take them out of their element. You can't take Mask out of their element and have that much fun with them, because they're just little G.I. Joes that aren't articulated. As a kid, it was always just the most fun.
What would you say is the most significant piece in your collection?
So basically, in 1980, and even a little bit before that, Hasbro designers really wanted to. A few of them really wanted to bring G.I. Joe back, because it had ended after Super Joe, the 12-inch line, all that stuff. And Hasbro just had no interest in G.I. Joe, even though that was sort of the brand that, along with things like Mr. Potato Head and pencil boxes, had gotten Hasbro where it was. At some point, they finally got management. Hassenfeld, actually, the guy who was in charge then of Hasbro, said, okay, fine, you have 1 month to convince me that G.I. Joe is even remotely viable. Jim Totley, as the meetings, I think it was like 2 weeks out or so, ran out to the store and bought a competitor figure. And it was a Buck Rogers Tiger Man figure, which is what is under here.
Okay.
And he brought this back to his desk, and he sculpted onto it, and he painted it, and he gave it military details, gun. There's a canteen on the back. He's got pockets. He's got, these straps here. Give it a helmet. And if you actually, it's weird over time, but if you look, there's actually camouflage paint. So it's actually a camo deco. It's not just as plain green as it looks.
Okay.
Figures were supposed to be the accessories. And some of the stories we've heard is that they would have just been torsos glued into the vehicles.
Oh, wow.
And not full figures. And at the very least, they weren't going to be articulated and have detail.
Huh.
Like, that was never even on the table until Jim Totley brought this into a meeting and said, no, look, we can do the articulation of Mego, we can do the detail of Star Wars, we can do, we can do faces, we can do, clothing, we could do weapons. So it kind of goes like this. So without Buck Rogers Tiger Man, G.I. Joe would not conceivably be this articulated, detailed line.
Wow.
Which could mean in a parallel universe like Sliders or something that G.I. Joe does not become successful in 1982. And therefore Hasbro cannot get the rights to Transformers.
Wow.
Which doesn't make it the huge success it is. I mean, you can see the domino effect. Now, obviously, you can do that with almost anything in the world. As far as being my most significant piece, yeah, I mean, it's sort of As far as action figures go and the way that we understand action figures today, it kind of starts with this. Even though Star Wars predates it, even though Mego obviously predates it, that's what it took. And as I kind of joked to Todd earlier, that his store might not be here because of all the action figure lines that they don't exist because of G.I. Joe, but G.I. Joe was the competition.
I've never really been that interested in G.I. Joe, but now I've never been happier to see one.
Yeah, I know, right? I couldn't believe he actually had the very first one. That was what was impressive.
Yeah, and I specifically like the reasons why he collected G.I. Joe over all the rest.
Yeah, he had a pretty interesting take on nostalgia, too.
For me, it's not so much that I need to be reminded of my childhood. It's not that that I can't let it go, or that it's not like a familiar smell where you're like, oh, I smell barbecue and I remember that time at camp. Like, for me, it's not that. For me, it's not taking my childhood for granted. Like these toys, which is one of the altruistic aspects of action figures, which there's been a lot of tests of. I acted out sort of my emotions, my creativity, my frustration, everything through these toys. So for me, the nostalgia is just not taking my childhood for granted. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, if we wanted to go in the exact opposite direction of nostalgia, there are some things that people collect that are a little weird.
Strange, even.
Strange, yes. Would you like to find out the top 10 weirdest collections we found on the internet?
Would I?
Ever got a strange fortune from a fortune cookie? Well, it belongs in the ever-growing collection of weird fortune cookie collections. Phil Miller is a sucrologist, meaning that he collects sugar packets and sugar cube wrappers. Indeed, Phil has been collecting since 1978 when he started with the Presidents of the United States sugar packets, and he hasn't looked back since. Life must be sweet if you collect sugar packets. Napkins. You use them and throw them away. But Hella Vinikova collects them, a lot of them. In fact, she has over 16,000 napkins from around the world, with sets of Christmas-themed napkins, company napkins, and even airline napkins. Like its name implies, the Air Sickness Bag Virtual Museum is all about vomit bags. Indeed, it catalogs more than 2,000 photos of air sickness bags from all over the world. Texan artist Barney Smith has an unusual choice of art medium, toilet seats. For the past 30 years, Barney has created over 700 artistically decorated toilet seat lids. AOL produced over 1 billion CDs with over 1,000 distinct designs. The company stopped producing the discs in 2006, but fear not. Lydia of Lydia's AOL Discs shares with us her collection of over 2,500 unique AOL diskettes and CDs.
Hey Dave, do you want to play my game?
I'm in the middle of a documentary. Stick to the script.
Some people see navel fluff or belly button lint as life's little annoyances. Not Graham Baker. He began collecting them since 1984, and now he's the world's largest collection of navel fluff according to Guinness Book of World Records. The Museum of Burnt Food is dedicated to accidentally burnt food, or carbonized culinary masterpieces. No intentionally burned artwork there. Deborah has a tip on kitchen decorating, which I think everyone should heed. Never scrimp on fire extinguishers and smoke alarms. She would know. Alex Bosey probably has one of the strangest collections. He collects stories about and examples of scams and hoaxes. In 1997, Alex created the Museum of Hoaxes as research notes for his doctoral dissertation, and the website quickly became popular. So much so that Alex, the hoaxpert, wrote 3 books: The Museum of Hoaxes, Hippo Eats Dwarf, and Elephants on Acid and Other Bizarre Experiments.
While those were all really cool, I did get the chance to interview the guy who I thought had the #1 strangest collection out there.
How did it compare to the hoaxes?
Well, I thought it was definitely a lot cooler than the hoaxes.
Okay.
In fact, here it is.
Every month, it seems, I read in the newspaper about the mayor of New York presenting someone the key to the city. And it got me wondering, what does one have to do to be presented the key to the city?
Keys to the cities, so what's the deal with that?
I wanted to see if it was possible to get presented keys to the city by mayors just by asking. And in 1 month, I was presented 95 keys.
95 keys, wow. So, what made you want to even consider doing that? I mean, how did you get the idea to go and collect keys?
It's a tradition that goes back more than 300 years to the period of British rule over New York City.
What does the key actually open?
Nothing that we know of in terms of a specific gate. It is ceremonial.
Have you tried to open something up?
We have not, but we have asked the question.
What did Dolly Parton do to get the key to the city?
That's a great question. I'm a little bit too young to remember.
So you don't think she landed a plane in the Hudson River to get the key?
Like Captain Schellenberger? No.
Nelson Mandela has 1 key. Baseball player David Cone has 3 keys. Is that fair?
This is news to me. It does not sound fair at all.
No one has any knowledge how anyone's qualified to get to the key to the city. For example, the Yankees all have multiple keys. Whenever they win the World Series, they have a key. So David Wells from the Yankees has 2 or 3 keys. Nelson Mandela only has 1 key. Mother Teresa has a key, but so does Susan Lucci from All My Children. Nothing makes sense with the key to the city, in my opinion. And when Mayor started presenting me the key for really doing nothing, I feel like I made the point.
Do you have any keys with you? Can you show us some of those, what they look like?
I would be glad to show you some of the keys. Let's see what we have. This is the key to the city of New Carrollton, Maryland.
I have no idea where that is, but okay.
Neither do I barely remember it. This is the key to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. So you can see, I think that they had a carpenter or a handyman do this. I don't think they've done this before, like a key like this.
I say, that's wood, isn't it?
It is definitely wood. That's Lake Geneva. And then this is a picture of a key, but it's not really a key. This was Douglas Palmer in Trenton, New Jersey gave me this key. And now it starts getting odd. I got 14 of the same model of key, which was a key that doubled as a bottle opener, and I'm not making that up. So I presented the key, and then if I wanted to open a Michelob, I could.
The mayor's going to use the key to the city to open up a beer.
This is the key to Palatine, Illinois. This is Palatine, Illinois. It's chocolate key.
For your hard work today, I want to present you with the key to the village of Palatine.
Woohoo, Mayor, thank you. Oh my gosh, it's chocolate. I just feel a conflict. Should I eat the key? Do I save the key?
So how many states did you end up going to?
I think it was like 16 states, something like that. This was Virginia. This was Hampton, Virginia. The kids made this. So it was really touching. This was the first time ever that they gave a key out in the history of Hampton, Virginia. So they gave me this key. The kids made it.
Is that your favorite one?
I think so, just because the kids did it. It was really, really kind of a good experience. I read to them, and they were really fun. And then this is Fredericksburg, Maryland's key. I don't think they've ever given out a key. The mayor messed with me. He made this himself. This was his tin foil from his breakfast. It was bacon grease covering it. And he said this is the key to the city, and I couldn't argue, so I still have it. The joke's on me that I keep this in my apartment.
So what happened with Detroit? I've been told I need to ask about Detroit.
So Detroit denied me the key to the city, which I was upset for a little. I was disappointed. I wasn't upset until I found out that Detroit in the early 80s awarded the key to the city to Saddam Hussein.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I'm not making that up. So Mark Malkoff denied the key to the city of Detroit, but they'll give it to Saddam Hussein. Why not?
Man, what have you done in your life that has caused the...
Yeah, I should have been nicer to kids in kindergarten. I don't know.
Yeah,
so it happens.
Did you have to do anything humiliating for the keys?
Why am I getting the key to the city?
You're going to put a kilt on and you're going to teach us how to do Irish dance.
I feel like I'm like Rowdy Piper from the 80s. 2, 3, 4, and then you circle on 5. The second Irish jig goes like this. You put your left foot in, you put your left foot out, you put your left foot in, and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey. The third Irish jig that I know is called the Irish robot, and follow after me. It's like this, like that, like that. The Irish Axl Rose. Okay, ready?
It's kind of weird to just like see a mayor like pull his guys aside and be like, "Oh, this guy wants the key to the city. What can we have him do?" You know?
Today you're going to be washing one of our police cars.
I'm gonna clean a car for the key. It can't be that hard. What did you do to this car?
The car's white underneath.
This car was never white.
This car was white.
I think I would rather go to jail than clean this car.
We can do that too.
Yeah, I think they just like messing with me, and it's all good. You know, they probably don't get many dudes just being like, "Can I have the key to the city?" I remember talking to mayors and asking them who was the last person you gave the key to the city, and I would get answers like Bill Clinton and John Kerry, And it just blew my mind that they would just give me the key. But again, I think it just comes back to the power of asking and enthusiasm and persistence.
So I went to go see a psychologist.
I was going to recommend one.
Not about me in particular, but about collectors in general.
The argument stands.
So I went to Lorain County, just outside of Cleveland, to go talk to Dr. and Professor Mark B. McKinley. He's a psychologist and professor there, and I kind of want to get in the minds of collectors and even extreme collectors.
Oh, and how'd it go?
Well, can you give me your name and what is it you do here?
Before I give you my name, I would like to introduce you to Julie.
Julie, okay.
Julie, very low maintenance girlfriend.
Okay.
But Julie also has an invisible friend named Ivy. Hello, Ivy.
Command, please.
Time?
The current time is 11 o'clock p.m.
It's a talking clock.
Thank you.
One thing we noticed about you is that you're actually in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Correct.
Okay, and for talking clocks?
I am in the Guinness World Book of Records for talking clocks, the largest collection in the world. When I got my recognition from Guinness, I had 782. But since that time, I've now added a few. And at my last count, 1,006 talking clocks.
1,006?
Yes.
That's amazing.
Because that was done a few years ago, and there's my certificate.
So do you keep most of them at your house?
Well, between the garage and the house.
Okay, cool. So what made you decide to get into collecting clocks, talking clocks?
Well, actually, my mother was sight impaired.
Okay.
In around 1990. And I got one, and I saw another for her, for the bedroom, one for the kitchen. And pretty soon I had 5 or 6, and I said, what the hell, I think I'm a collector. I have about 300 on display in the house.
Okay.
On the steps, in my bedroom, in my office, and in the kitchen. But they all don't talk, because 300 talking clocks talking at the same time would drive one insane. So I only have about 100.
Now it's 11:37 a.m.
That's another of my friends. That's Panda Poe.
Panda Poe.
Yes.
Nice. Let me ask you a question. What is the definition of a collector?
It's any time you have a number of objects or items that are organized, that are on display generally, and that you have an interest in. For example, some people collect memories.
Yeah.
As I do, and then people who have albums, for example, family pictures. Okay. But for me, I have the pictures on my refrigerator, 100 plus, and being that it's in the kitchen where I spend a lot of time, those are the memories every time I look at them.
So he wrote a book on collecting?
2 actually, and he wrote a ton of papers too. He gave me one of his books. It's called Tick Tock Talk, and it's a book that describes all of his talking clocks and the collection that he has of them.
He wrote a second book too?
Yeah, it's called The Psychology of Collecting. Everybody collects something. Yes, you do.
Other reasons people collect are for investment reasons.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't generally work for most people, by the way.
Okay.
Another reason people collect is by accident, like junk drawers, for example. Another reason people collect might be for professional collectors, law enforcement officers, for example, that collect evidence.
Right.
So a whole variety of reasons.
Wow. Yeah, some things I didn't even think about. Yeah, the evidence thing was pretty good.
Yeah.
We have run across some people who have collected for historical
Yes.
preservation.
Archaeologists, for example,
Yeah.
would be another reason.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you think that it's common for people to become emotionally attached to objects? And if so, why?
Absolutely. Just as we become attached to our pets or our companions, our animal companions, we impart qualities to them that are of interest to us, and the relationship is established, and we grow attached.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Sure.
I guess I never really thought about it as a relationship between you.
I mean, people who grow so attached to their cars, they name them, or their boats, or whatever.
That's true. Have you ever seen a collection get out of hand?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of collections get out of hand. I've seen people come in really hard into a hobby and they all of a sudden want to be a big player.
Wow.
So they start spending tens of thousands of dollars unbeknownst to their family, and the next thing you know, they're getting divorced. I have seen collecting ruin families.
What do you think are some of the reasons why people become extreme collectors or even hoarders?
Probably the most common reason, and there are a number of reasons, the obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. It's a pretty common explanation. There are other accountabilities, but
I've heard the possibility of losing someone could trigger something like that in OCD.
Sure.
OCD?
Oh, absolutely. Trying to make up for the loss.
My grandmother, or my great Grammy, she was a hoarder. She had a 4-story tall home down there in Indian Woodard Place.
Okay.
She had 20-foot ceilings throughout the whole first floor, and all the rest of them were 10-foot ceilings throughout the next levels, and just stuff.
Do you know why she did that?
She'd see a purse. No, I gotta have a new purse. She'd use it once, never use it again.
Okay.
Buy an outfit, use it once, never use it again. Or buy an outfit because she thought it looked cute and never use it.
Was it always like that, or did it happen?
I think it happened. I think it was more of an emotional thing after her husband passed. She got real depressed.
Okay.
So that was her way of working around that.
Okay.
Me and my mom ended up going in there and cleaning that house out, and it took us 6 weeks. Just off the first floor, I think we ended up finding almost close to $12,000 in cash.
Wow.
Just through random purses. Like, she'd use a purse, take all her money in there, she'd pull $400 or $500 out of her account, throw it in her purse to go shopping that day, and then throw the purse off in a pile or forget where she set it. And then that, dude, I was like, oh my God, there's Gucci, there's Louis Vuitton, there's Armani. These purses. I think we ended up raising almost $150,000 off between all the antiques, merchandise, and everything that was in the home, including cash and all.
And the thing that makes for a hoarder, though, is, and most people don't know this, it's not the quantity of your collection. It's the degree that your collection may cost you financially when you can't afford it, or it causes some spaces where you store your collection to become unlivable as they were originally designed.
I've seen, yeah.
Or that it interferes with your social life, for example. Sure.
What kind of help is there for people who may fall into the extreme ends like hoarding?
If the assumption is that it's OCD, then there are pills for that.
Okay.
But also, if it goes beyond pills, we have therapies in psychology, for example. Probably one of the better ones is a cognitive behavior therapy by a clinically registered professional.
Okay.
We also have other possibilities, and that is some cities are doing interventions by county government, for example, because oftentimes, in fact, there have been hoarders that their houses have collapsed or whatever, and they've died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen anything that extreme.
No.
When it comes to extreme collecting, Shane Turgeon also had a story about his own personal life that was pretty impactful.
I don't know where to really begin with it. Suffice it to say that within a very short period of time, I went from having a career of 10 years and being married to quitting my career to open my brand new business and being divorced in about the same 2-month period.
Wow.
And then after opening my business and it not quite going the way that it should have, and being in business with the wrong people, and almost losing that business, then there was a heavy emotional toll that came with all of that, because all of that happened within about a year of itself. I make no bones in saying that I struggled with depression for a long time. I'm trying to be a lot more outspoken about depression because of that, because I think it is something that people need to speak about. I was getting to the point where I was getting 5 or 6 packages a week. I was buying so much stuff.
Oh.
And after realizing how vapid that is and how unrewarding that really is, I was like, okay, well, maybe I should actually sell off my collection. And I kind of went to this point where I was like, I'm selling everything. I'm done. I'm getting out.
Wow.
It's time for a complete fresh start. Some very good friends in the hobby kind of talked me off that ledge when I approached them with what I was planning to do. And I'm grateful that they did that, because I was swinging from one extreme to the other. And after selling 75% of my collection off and keeping the things that I really enjoy, I'm left now with a collection that I'm very, very happy with and is full of amazing items, and I have a much healthier balance with it. I might buy 2 or 3 things a year now, as opposed to 2 or 3 things a week or a day like I was doing before.
Okay. Do you have any advice for people who might find themselves in a similar situation?
Any advice that I have to give to people in that sort of a situation is to really take a step back and evaluate what is actually important in your life, and evaluate what actually makes you happy. Because if happiness is coming from the acquisition of things, then I would suggest that you may not be actually happy. be truly happy.
Okay, so are you happy now?
I'm happier than I've ever been.
That's fantastic. That's good. That's good.
We know what it looks like when a collection becomes a part of somebody, but when does it start to define somebody?
Interesting you should ask. In my book, Collecting Superman Memorabilia, he became Superman.
Wow.
That pretty much answers your question.
Wow.
Yes.
So when the collection kind of takes over, you're...
Yeah, and it did him.
Wow.
So he's Superman, I'm Batman. What's your point?
The first step is admitting you have a problem. That's my point.
Okay, well, for me, it's different. Look, let me explain to you why I collect Batman. The reason why I started getting into Batman was because in 2005, Christopher Nolan came out with Batman Begins, and I found that to be really inspirational. In fact, so much that I even wrote a book called Christianity and Dark Knight right afterwards. It took me 2 months to write this book. And the first half of the book has to deal with Bruce Wayne and how he became Batman and how you can imitate those particular qualities of Batman and in your own life to become the hero of your own story. And then the second half of the book has to deal with the various villains and the specific sins that they can't overcome to be normal like everyone else, and how we meet people like that every day, just not to that extreme. For example, Mr. Freeze really can't overcome apathy. If I look at Poison Ivy, it reminds me of like idolatry. If it's Two-Face, maybe it reminds me of hypocrisy. If it's wrath, then obviously anger. So there's different things I look at that make me think of, what's, should be avoided or what should be imitated as far as these characters go. And that's what really inspires me about Batman.
What kind of advice would you give collectors in general?
To be rationally in contact with reality in terms of your collections and being a collector.
Sounds like great advice.
Agreed.
I'm Batman. So, I heard you've been talking to my boss, Eric Guthrie.
I did. When I was thinking of collectors, your boss came to mind. He has a collection that's way different than anybody else's.
Yes, he does.
He has the largest, if not the only, laser tag museum in the world, doesn't he?
He does. In fact, he's the only person in the industry who's still preserving the entire history.
That's why I wanted to talk to him. So we're at the Laser Tag Museum office. Can you tell me your name and a little bit of what you do?
Certainly. My name is Eric Guthrie, and I'm the curator for the Laser Tag Museum located in Louisville, Kentucky. We collect everything related to laser tag. The toy laser tag, the tactical laser tag, the commercial laser tag artifacts of any sort. We collect and archive.
How did you even get into that?
Before I was in laser tag, I was director of corporate development for a pizza chain in Northwest Ohio. And I remember this 16-year-old kid who was a pie maker, and he said to me, "Hey Eric, have you done laser tag?" And I'm like, "Laser what?" And he's like, "Laser tag." And I'm like, "No, what is it?" And he says, "Oh, yeah, you got to go try it out." So he got off work, and so we went and visited a place called Qzar in Toledo. And I walked in, and the place was packed. It was about 7:30 on a Friday night. The assistant manager on the front counter, they had inflatable air guitars. ZZ Top was playing on the loudspeakers. They were doing the motion of ZZ Top with the guitars. And I remember walking up, and I said, "Oh, I'd like to buy a game of laser tag." And they told me there was a 3-hour wait.
3 hours?
3 hours. And they wanted $7. And this is back in 1993. Yeah. They want $7, and I said, "How long is this going to be?" And they said 15 minutes.
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh my!" And so we bought tickets. We sat there, but it was so amazing to walk in the arena and the dark and the black lights and the glowing effect and the fog on the ground and the music and the adrenaline when the game kicked in, and I was hooked.
Wow.
And so yeah, I've loved being in laser tag ever since I got in.
So our documentary is about collections. How did your collection grow into a museum?
There's a comedian in the 70s that most people won't remember anymore by the name of George Carlin, and he had a comedy routine about stuff. Mm-hmm. And I started out with just a few laser tag t-shirts and a laser tag hat and laser tag bumper stickers and occasionally I would get a broken laser tag pack. And so my laser tag stuff grew into a larger amount of stuff, and then I got even more stuff, and soon I had a room full of laser tag related artifacts, and then I have an opportunity to put them all on display at a laser tag facility in Louisville, Kentucky. So we had cabinets created, and we put these laser tag packs up on display, and we called it, liberally used the word museum. Okay. And now today we have over 70 feet of custom built display cases where you literally walk through the history of laser tag.
What is it about laser tag that makes you want to preserve the history?
At the end of the day, in our industry, we don't have a tangible product. If you go out to the store and you buy something, you have something to show for it. But in laser tag, it's all about the experience and the bonding. People will go play laser tag and have a great time. It's a great first date event. It's great for little kids' birthday parties. It's great for corporate team building. Mm-hmm. So laser tag actually appeals to a wide range of an audience. And I like the fact that you can't play laser tag and leave in a bad mood. You leave energized and adrenalized, and you leave wanting to do it again. And that is what's really cool about laser tag.
What advice would you give to someone who wanted to collect and preserve history?
Start as soon as you can. Start at the earliest stage possible. Start with what you can afford. Start with what you can achieve. I wish I would have started this earlier. I'd been in the industry for a few years. I had the opportunity and didn't realize it. And if I would have taken the opportunities, then I could have preserved some pieces of our industry's history. I know in my past collections that I've collected, I wish that I would have started the collections earlier than I had. So if you think you have a passion for it, jump on it.
He has so many items in his collection that are considered unicorns in the industry. I mean, prototypes, concept art, and he's even gotten even more since you talked to him.
Speaking of prototypes, I did actually get a chance to talk to Gyro Viper, and he told me a way that prototypes help tell the history of collectibles.
Prototypes can answer the questions that the toys cannot. Prototypes can tell the story that the toys cannot. So collecting prototypes, they give you the who, what, where, why, and when that something exists. Prototypes can answer, most questions that you have about what you love, and maybe why you love them. Like a lot of it's marketing. A lot of the reasons they were done a certain way is so that you could not resist. And there's a psychology there. I actually have a 1987 Hasbro marketing research guide where they sat a bunch of kids down, and this book actually predicts the end of toy lines that showed up in that died in 1988, like Brave Star, and I mean it really does. It really says, kids are like, well, I don't like that. And so it's stuff like this that it tells a story. And, telling stories is kind of why you play with toys anyway. So this is like telling the adult story of that.
So how did laser tag even start to begin with?
So in 1984, a man named George Carter III out of Dallas, Texas, opened the very first laser tag business known as Photon, the sport of the next century. So the very first laser tag system that we've ever been able to track pretty well accepted is Photon. Photon opened on March 28, 1984 in Dallas, Texas. It had a laser tag helmet that had different color lights to tell when you were tagged, when you're stunned, and then this heavy chest piece and the battery belt. Combined, the Photon equipment weighed about 14 pounds. But it was revolutionary, and it started the laser tag industry. And it just celebrated its 30th anniversary in Laurel, Maryland. There was a big 30th anniversary party for Photon. So this is it. This is what started the laser tag industry, and that's why it gets the most display case of any laser tag system, and why it's the very beginning of all the displays is for Photon. And George had gotten the idea of laser tag by watching Star Wars, where Han Solo and Luke and Leia are getting across the Death Star trying to get back to the Millennium Falcon. Wow. And they're fighting it out with the stormtroopers with the big famous laser battle scene. And that inspiration gave George the idea to develop laser tag, and it took him about 6 to 8 years for the technology to catch up with his vision, and he finally opened Photon, and it really grew from there.
Wow, so Star Wars is like, if there was no Star Wars, there'd maybe no laser tag.
Exactly.
That's pretty.
So the real question is, does George Lucas know he's the father of the laser tag industry?
Laser tag, I am your father. When we talk about history, we're talking about preserving it so that it outlasts us. I mean, I think about my Transformer collection. Is it going to outlive me? You know, I mean, what's going to happen after I die? Someone's going to have to take our stuff and do something with it, right?
I talked to someone who's dealing with that right now. His name is Robert E. Handley, and he's kind of getting up there in years, but when he was younger, he ran away with the circus, the Barnum and Bailey Circus,
wow.
and he used to collect a ton of the memorabilia. And so this is the very subject we want to talk with him about.
Can you tell me your name and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Robert E. Handley. I'm a photographer, professional photographer. I've been kind of a collector all my life of different things, mostly the circus. I have a large Mickey Mouse collection. I always liked Mickey. Some of my Mickey Mouses are worth as much as $10,000 because they go all the way back to 1930. I have one of the limited edition of Walt Disney and Mickey. That's a bronze statue that is in front of the Magic Castle in Disney World. There was only 100 of them made, and 99 of them were given as dignitaries. One guy didn't show up, I guess, because I was able to get a hold of it. I think mostly out of all the things that I have, I'm mostly remembered from my time with the circus and the people I met. I was very fortunate when I got on. Most of the management of the Ringling Brothers Circus at that time were from Bloomington. I told them I wanted to learn from the ground up. And so the first thing they gave me was a pair of coveralls and a shovel. And they introduced me to all the things that the wonderful circus animals leave behind as they do their acts. And then I worked my way up. I started doing a little clowning on the side. And at that time, Ringling still owned the circus. I never met John Ringling North. He was rather evasive, but his brother, younger brother, Henry Ringling North, came to the show every summer and spent a month or two with the show. I ended up getting a scholarship, so I went on to Southern Illinois University. I would go often to visit, but then I started my photography business, and I missed it. I missed a lot of things about it. I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. I got to see the entire United States and Canada, and I got to learn a lot about people. It was a great, great learning experience.
As it turns out, there's a woman by the name of Maureen Brunsdale. She is the curator of the Illinois State University Milner Library Special Collections Department. She took on Robert Handley's collection because Bloomington, Illinois, his hometown, is actually the largest collector of circus history.
Okay. And what is the library's interest in Bob Handley's collection?
Bob Handley was a local boy who ran away with the circus, and we're always interested in collecting circus stories, circus material, ephemera for our Circus and Allied Arts collection. What we're looking at here are some of the materials that came from that barn, as I said, and you're seeing some superstars of trapeze. Alfredo Cadona, still considered the best flyer ever.
Wow.
He's in a restaurant in Berlin. The year is 1932, as you can see on the film, and he's sitting with Art Kinsello. Art Kinsello is, at this time, a young man who is up and coming. He's a flyer or a trapeze performer in his own right. He eventually will take the center ring spot from Alfredo Cadona when Alfredo ruins his shoulder.
Oh, wow.
We knew that Alfredo Cadona was in Berlin. We knew the Kinsellos were in Berlin around the same time. But until we actually got them photographed in the same place, we couldn't say that their lives ever intersected, and it was Robert Handley's collection that proved that. So it's a big, big deal.
That's amazing. That's really cool. So
Practice fly bar that came from the barn. I mean, imagine holding on to that and swinging off into the distance. It's mind-boggling. I would never.
it'd be the last thing I ever did. Wow. Sounds like he had a lot to offer with this collection.
Yeah, and what sparked my interest in Robert Handley is I actually talked to him before any of this, and he told me about his neighbor who was getting up there in years himself, and he had collected a lot of vintage maps and really neat stuff. And when he did pass away, his daughter came in with a box, packed it all up, and threw it in a dumpster.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I was worried about is when you collect all this stuff, what is valuable to one person is trash to somebody else. Yeah, I worry about things like this. I've taken years of collecting things and putting things together, and they mean a lot to me. They may not mean a lot to somebody else. So I want my stuff to continue to make people happy when I'm gone, to continue to educate people when I'm not here anymore. That I took the time to save this stuff, that it wasn't destroyed, and that people can enjoy it for many, many years to come.
You know, when someone inherits someone else's collection, or even, you know what? Hang on one second. Here, come over here real quick. I want to show you something. When Grandma died, she left this box in her closet, and I found it. And it's really cool. It's a scrapbook, and inside it's got newspaper articles talking about President Kennedy's assassination. And that's not all. I mean, there's tons of articles in here. Just tons.
I didn't even know she even collected this stuff.
I didn't either. Grandpa told me about it, after she died. And that's not all. There's more. There's like magazines. There are books. There's a record about his inauguration. And there's bags and all kinds of stuff in here. And this is something that she was absolutely obsessed over, it seemed like.
So what made you want to keep it?
For me, it's one of the few ways I can remember them by. I'm not going to sell it. I'm not going to make any money off of it.
Right.
But it means something to me because it meant something to her.
I do strongly encourage people, as morbid as it sounds, I do strongly encourage people to have a solid direction of assets for their collection. You should have an appraisal report, and you should have direction, because you don't know that you could step out your house tomorrow and get hit by a bus. Have an appraisal report, have it updated constantly, and have a direction of assets.
How often should they update the report?
I would say at least, once every 2 to 3 years. In the States, there's an amazing company called Collectibles Insurance Agency, and you don't actually need an appraisal report. All you need to do is say, I have a collection worth X amount of dollars consisting of X amount of things, and you can get an insurance policy for that.
Okay.
In the big scheme of things, we've looked at tons of different reasons why people collect. For childhood nostalgic reasons, for social reasons, to preserve history. It's really interesting that when we talk to people, there was one last question we always asked them.
What matters most to them in their lives?
What matters most in your life?
Certainly not collecting, and certainly not everything you see behind me. I would imagine that there was a point in my 20s where I would have said collecting was probably the most important thing in my life, but after having my ass handed to me by life, that has changed a lot. And what is most important to me is just being surrounded by good people who love me.
The reality is you better wake up, kiss the sky, thank the Lord for what you got, and enjoy the ride, because all of this will come and go. All the value that we perceive it's nothing under what my children provide me and my wife provide me, and God and the church and the simple things that I get in life. Sometimes just a beer at the end of the day. It's a lot more enjoyable than fretting over all the other things that I have or don't have.
Living, just enjoying life, getting out, doing things, experiencing life, is taking walks. I mean, that whole slow down and smell the roses, that's great for a few moments, but then speed up, because there's a lot to life to go out and see and do. I've been fortunate in the laser tag industry that I've been able to get to go to places most people never ever get to see. So just living life is now the most important part of life.
We're basically nothing material. It was all friendships, family, love, God, whatever it was. People's hearts didn't belong to their items. The collection didn't define them.
Annually, we give people things for holidays and specifically for birthdays. And I remember I went to a seminar one time. The gentleman who was giving it basically made everyone close their eyes. And he had like soft music playing. He had this kind of scent machine that smelled like bubble gum. It was pretty interesting. And he had us close our eyes and just relax. Breathe in, breathe out, relax. And it's kind of very therapeutic. And then he basically made us all remember our most favorite birthday ever, what age we were, what we were doing, all those things like that. And he had us write down the aspects of those days on paper, like what was the most important things. And the one thing like that shocked everyone was that nobody wrote down objects that they received. Nobody was like, oh, I got this for my birthday. Instead, what it was focused on was who was there, you know, what made that occasion special, the feelings that it brought back, the people that they hadn't seen in years. And that was really touching, because it's one of those things that, like, when we think about the most important things in our life, we don't tend to think about things. We think about the people who made those things special.
Yeah. I know, personally, I'm thinking about our 30th birthday. And it's because it's basically the last time that we got a chance to see Grandpa happy. Yeah, I think about like when we had, you know, we had rented out a movie theater and we showed like our old home movies that we used to make when we were kids. And like, since, you know, Grandpa had shot all those, you know, just seeing the look on his face, just how happy he was, you know, just him remembering those days. Well, this documentary's got us thinking about a lot of things, and you know, about what matters the most. You know, one of the things we set out to do with this, and I hope people can take away, is it's not about the things, but it is about the stories. It's about the experiences that we share with one another. And using those stories to connect with one another is the most important thing. And concerning my own stuff, looks like I got a decision to make. It's unbelievable to think how this project got started and where it's taken us. Our journey is finally coming to an end, and where has it led me? Right back to my own front door. But things are a little different now, a little clearer. Well, it has been quite an adventure. We've made new friends, heard great stories, and it makes me look at my collection in a whole new light. Sharing in all the memories that built this room is what gives it its purpose, and it's something I won't take for granted. Still, it hasn't made my decision any easier. It makes me wonder what other memories could still be made with it.
Daddy, you want to play a Mario game?
Yeah, let's go play the Mario game. Hey Farron, who should I play as?
Princess.
I don't want to be the princess.
What is your name and what it is that you collect?
I'm Trevor, and I like to collect creepypastas.
Creepypastas. Is there any particular creepypasta that you really, really like?
I like Jeff the Killer
Jeff the Killer? Why? What is it that intrigues you about Jeff the Killer?
because he cut off his eyelids because he couldn't bear to sleep anymore.
I've seen the pictures of Jeff the Killer, yeah, online. That's pretty creepy. Creepypasta, I'll tell you what, they're creepy. What's your name? What do you collect?
My name is Quentin, and I collect bouncy balls.
Bouncy balls? How many do you think you have? A couple million? All right, so what's your name and what is it that you collect, or what is it you want to collect?
I want to collect bottle caps.
You want to collect bottle caps?
Yeah.
What, anything specific that you want to collect as far as bottle caps goes, or why you want to collect that?
I have no idea.
No idea, just want to collect something?
Yeah.
Right. So the way you is, what you probably want to just simply say is, you think anybody will notice it moved?
I hope not.
Who's in charge of continuity?
Did that picture just move? Yeah, even though he could have taken the high road, sorry, he could have taken the high road, he took the muddy.
And the title is Tick Tock Talk. the collected history and significance of talking clocks. It's becoming an irritant.
Did you happen to go over the questions by chance?
Yeah, I've gone over them a couple times, so I've got a pretty good idea of what you're looking for.
Okay, we'll throw those out because we're going to start with all new questions. No kidding. Just kidding. I'm just messing with you, man.
Now, I'm not gonna lie, there's probably part of me that, just for like a social experiment, might want to like destroy one on camera or paint it silly, but chances are I wouldn't do that. I guess it depends how far along the cancer was.
Yeah, if you keep your eyes open for one of those Batmobile things, I'd appreciate it.
My lizard did that.
It's time for you to get out of my city. Why is that? Because I'm the Batman. Alright, it's time to transform him into the... Oh, shoot. Where are those instructions?